So hi guys. So I'm making this video to cover the examiner comments on the IBS paper of November 24. So this is the first comment that is available on the IC site itself. So the first question was relating to this case study number one, the descriptive one. How CA Sandeep should deal with the issues in the respective audit report of the Moon and Prime Limited. So what I'll karna, firstly I'll read the examiner comment. What he is saying, he it was mentioned that it was required for the auditor to address the issue in the audit report relating to uncover trade receivables of this amount that was outstanding but not written off in the financials and the failure of management to undertake the physical count, which constitute in this detail. So now, what is his comment now? Many of the examinees have answered the requirement as per SA 705 modification and concluded that the auditor shall express an adverse opinion relating to the part second. Majority of the examinees covered in their answer that the auditor is unable to obtain the sufficient and appropriate, and auditor shall give the disclaimer. Now, some of the examinees have not answered that the inventory constituting 30% of the total assets is significant, which is both material and pervasive. So, like while giving disclaimer, we just have to give na कि we are not able to obtain SAE. So, like, but I'll show you something. So while giving the answers key of audit report, मतलब in audit not pervasive, then we can't just issue a disclaimer or adverse. We have to see the impact also by not obtaining sufficient and appropriate audit evidence of, like in an audit, if we having mortality of 1,000 crores and we get and do not get sufficient SAE for 1 crore rupees, so we can't disclaim our audit report. So that's why we have to see whether that is pervasive also. So that what he is saying na ki some of the examiners which is both material and pervasive, so that in audit report question na, try to mention this whenever you are writing disclaimer or whatever the question is na, so mention this. So that's why he's saying performance of examiners was average. In open book na, he will be willing to. So what you can do na ki while opening this type of question na ki disclaimer, you can directly open the essay, direct essay, and see what is written in that. Because if you open the suggested answer now, कि they have concluded like what they have underlined, trade receivable having this amount in the, that is the fact, case fact. So how they have presented in their answers, firstly the a case fact, मतलब कि provision of SA 705, then what next they have done कि trade receivable amount, that is the case fact they have presented. Now last they have concluded कि on the basis of this what they will it will be done, the adverse opinion that we have to issue in our audit report, because the effect in the financial will be material and pervasive, that we have to conclude whenever we are issuing an opinion in the audit report. Similar in second, 30% of the value constitute which is significant, that we have to represent कि मतलब it is not given कि what is the materiality or that, but we have to represent ना कि 30% of the total assets cover in मतलब that is significant area. What if, like, if it was covering 1 or 2%, we can't just say ki we will give a disclaimer. We will not, as we are not unable to obtain the SAE. So similar, we have to conclude on this basis also. And a reporting question, see what he's asking: reporting as per standard or auditing or just reporting? Because reporting will also cover Caro reporting also another two. Mainly in CA final, we will cover Caro and this audit report. So we have to see impact on the Caro also, whether it will have any impact over Caro. Okay, like inventory will have a report in Caro close one, close two for inventory particular. One is relating to PP. That we have to see properly. So now what is next comment in 1.7? Now it was required to compute the taxable income and the income tax liability of a non-resident. So now what examinee have not correctly calculated is the income from the capital gain based on the special provision, that is conversion of Indian currency into foreign currency, and a vice versa applicable to non-resident. And also majority of the examinees have not computed the income of other sources covering all the points given in the case studies. Case study के अंदर मतलब what are these two points are there? Okay, firstly, examiner computed the wrong capital gain amount, that is relating to conversion. What you can do now to avoid this type of error, just see which provision of capital gain or what is relating to income tax computation it will be applicable. later on you can see now cross verify. Firstly, on the basis of your knowledge you can just attempt, but if you matlab, that depends on your ki how much fast or you are able to see the provision, or like you are comfortable with. So like if I'll open the case answer, this one, in conversion of sale equity share, this one particular for non-resident, how you have to convert TTSR, TTBR. So see properly on which date and what rate you have to use properly, TTBR or TTSR, and on which date you have to use that. So if you do this type of error in this, na, matlab, like, it will represent you do not know the provision, exact provision. So it is better now whenever you are having this type of question, see the provision and which date. It will help in later on writing. मतलब इसमें what you can do ना कि आप क्या कर सकते हो कि firstly write conclude just on the basis of the amount. Later on you can leave space while attempting the question, leave some space, and later on you can write what provision was applicable. Because in the ICA what do ना कि in the presentation of income tax liability they do not write the note properly. But if you write na provision in your conclusion, मतलब note, it will help the examiner, and that he will know कि you know the provision at least in what how you are converting that. TTSR on what why which date you are using and why you are using that. But if you quote the provision, then you can easily see, मतलब make him ना कि why you are doing that. So now next, it was required to advise on the correct treatment of IGST paid on the purchase of machinery used for different purposes, exclusive for taxable supply or exempted supply, and for both. So, what examinee have calculated is the common credit to be added to the output tax liability based on Rule 43, governing situation in the case study. Now, some of the examinees have explained the relevant tool without calculating the amount. The performance of examinees was below the average for particular 1.8A. Now, what was the requirement of 1.8A? Let me go to this. Correct treatment of IGST paid on the machinery by the SPCL to be filed as per the, मतलब कि करेक्ट ट्रीटमेंट क्या होगा, हमें वो हमें वो बताना है वहाँ पे. तो करेक्ट ट्रीटमेंट मतलब कुछ एग्जामिनर्स ने क्या, व्हाट सम एग्जामिनर दे डन इज कि विदाउट कैलकुलेटिंग ना दे हैव शोन कि क्या होगा उसके अंदर, मतलब कि ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ थ्योरी दे मस्ट हैव प्रेजेंटेड. विल गो टू 1.8 a solution. How we have to present is computation, मतलब mainly computation and on the provision कि what you will do, the amount to be added in output tax liability of the month of March, that is the conclusion. But in the examination na, you just can't write, at least write the conclusion, what will happen in this scenario. You just write in a one or two liner ki what will happen. That will help to present your answer in a well presentable manner. So now next is uh, it was required under the provision of CSTA to determine the supply of goods sent outside India by company for exhibition is considered to take place, whether an invoice is required to be issued for that brought back or not, and whether a refund can be claimed for such use. Now, majority of the examiner has answered the GST provision relating to time of supply, issue of invoice, stipulated period of 6 months for bringing back in respect of goods for sale and approval, because it was visible. Now, some examinees have not answered correctly the provision relating to refund claims and conditions. It was Kina. If I'll go to the question, what he's asking, when is the supply of goods is firstly supply ka mani jayegi. Next is when supply will happen, take place. Whether invoice is required to be issued or not. Now, next requirement is whether refund can be claimed or not. Refund was also a question. On what condition? So you have to mention the refund related requirement also, not just ki good. If it is a three marker question, मतलब the three, मतलब at least you have to write on one some condition or something. You can't just ignore this. So that's what we want to say कि majority is what they have written is ना कि approval basis पे होगा, time of supply and issue of invoice they mentioned properly, but some examinees have missed that thing. So मतलब do not मतलब see ना what are the requirement of the question, do not miss out. So what I'll recommend is in this type of question ना कि supply firstly write in break three sentences, मतलब कि इसको three sentences के अंदर break कर दो whenever you are writing the conclusion or solution of that. कि supply of goods sent to outside India, उसके अकॉर्डिंग उसका आंसर करो. नेक्स्ट इज कि इनवॉइस टू बी इशूड और नॉट. ऐसे ही गिव द हेडिंग ऑफ दिस इन योर आंसर, इनवॉइस टू बी इशूड और नॉट. नेक्स्ट इज रिफंड रिलेटेड रिक्वायरमेंट इन रिस्पेक्ट ऑफ दिस. It will help you also कि later on कि if you wanna write something else or मतलब add on you wanna do add on, by looking into the actual provision, then you can also do, and it will help the examiner also. You have presented in a well manner, whatever the heading is there, so that helps the examiner and you also. So now moving to next comment 2.6. In the given situation, examinees were required to classify the inventory and trade receivable as current or non-current, and loan for working capital requirement as current or non-current liability. So now most of the examinees have answered well the classification and current and on the basis of normal operating cycle. However, the classification of the loan liability, where repayment terms were rescheduled before the audit financial approval in 10 will get triggered adjustment or not, because but question is asking, we can see, we'll go to 2.5 here. 2.6, will you classify inventory in this and this in respect to default of, so it's just asking about only, well, not other thing, because it's just asking about the classification is dealt as per Ind AS 1, and Ind AS 10 can also be triggered because current, it is a adjusting event or non-adjusting event, that can affect its classification also. We have to see all that too also. So how would you classify the liability due to, and in Ind AS 1 also there is a provision that is if the amount is rescheduled or something related to that, and how it the answer, the classification will change accordingly before committee approval or the financial statement approval, that we have to see properly. How that will happen na, if you know FR provision better na, then you can write this much properly ki Ind AS 10 also link can be there, Ind AS 1 whatever repayment schedule, that will happen when you know FR provision. If you know na this much clarity or you can detail, you can't, it will be a difficult task for you. So now moving to next. It was required under the GST Act to determine the implication of the import of services from a service provider located outside India by a recipient in India with respect to the place of supply, time of supply, and the due date for the payment of GST liability. So now the majority of the examiners have explained the provision of the implication in the given situation, where recipient is liable to pay under the RCM. However, many examiners have mistake in pointing out the time of supply correctly as per legal provision, which has resulting in incorrect due date of payment GST liability. The performance of examinee was average. So now, if I'll go to the provision and the solution at GST 2.7. Location of the recipient in Chennai, that is fine. But in given case, the recipient place of supply is in India. Since the services are imported into consideration, the tender want to supply की चीज एक तो प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई इंडिया के अंदर आ गई, देन वी हैव टू सी कि वेदर जीएसटी विल बी देयर और नॉट, कि सप्लाईज है या नहीं. नेक्स्ट व्हाट वी हैव टू सी ना कि द टैक्स इज पेएबल बाय whom, RCM is applicable or not, and if RCM is applicable then we have to see RCM provision, and that's too relating to goods or services, because majorly it will be a service. Then as per section number 12 we have to see कि whether it will be an, how in case of RCM की due date of payment and date immediately the 60 days. So that will depend कि on the basis of this you will can answer properly कि date of payment कब हुई and date immediately after the 60 days from the issue of invoice. And if the invoice is not issued and from the due date of the invoice we have to see that. तो तो वो हमें properly थोड़ा देखना होगा, dates की गलती कई बार हो जाती है हमसे. And जिस month की this also ना, this line में you may might miss कि due date उसकी कब होएगी. If the due the time of supply is 22nd, the due date of payment will be in the next month of 3B, you will say that is the due date. So properly see na कि this line you might miss this small thing, then half a mark you may lose, just a small, you can write this line कि what is the due date if the question is asking. Now moving to next. It was required to calculate the traditional variance and operational, including planning variance under the given situation of the new technology. After adoption of new, examinees have approached the requirement of the question correctly, but failed to get the correct answer because many of us have not attempted SMP question properly. So that's why we are not able to answer this properly. Most of the examiner failed to use the revised standard for actual output to arrive at the variances rather than using the original standard for showing the desired variances. मतलब that's what happened कि ना कि we do not know SCMP question properly and at last we will write just on the basis कि whatever we know and see. So that's the major reason. बाकी ये क्वेश्चन रिव्यू हो सकता है कि रिवाइज हुआ है तो स्टैंडर्ड वी हैव टू रिवाइज actual output using actual output. So that's when will come when you know the standard ghosting or something that. Now moving to next. Examiners were required to suggest the prescribed correction of errors discovered in the financial statements of the company and treatment of such error arising out of incorrect application of accounting policy as per Ind AS. The scenario contained the observation of the auditors to the company that the financials are not Ind AS compliant because there were errors in the financials in the accounting year and the clarification of financial manager that there was a retrospective change in accounting policy which was made in financial not followed or properly disclosed. Now, in light of such background information, the answer is expected to address prominently three elements. कि whenever there is an error, na, Ind AS 8 will be triggered, prior period errors or not. Then third balance sheet was need to be prepared or not. That you have to see properly. And the financial statement are yet to be approved that the current year में what will impact, how will rectify that. What he is providing, three elements that you have to see. Discussion of Ind AS prior period errors, the treatment to be given arising of incorrect application for the preceding year. That is the third balance sheet. We have to go in third balance sheet or not. And the next is key the financial statement of current year are yet to be approved. कि मतलब that we have to see ना कि अगर current year भी हो गया तो how we have to proceed now. It is observed that the most of the examinee have provided the generic answer without giving proper coverage to one or all of the aforesaid issues below average. Because might happen in FR also a bit how we have to present our answer. In day said prior period error, it will be there. So write in day said prior period. And whenever there is an accounting policy or prior period error, na, a retrospective change will be there. On now, a retrospective change will affect na ki third balance sheet need to be prepared or not. If that is having material impact over the previous year is. So that we have to see properly. If you write that much ना मतलब examiner will know कि preceding year में भी how you will present कि अगर गलती a small amount की थी तो last year while open that कि like 1 lakh error was there of 1,000 crore balance sheet, you will not open the previous year financials also, you will adjust in the current year financial, though it is a prior period error you will mention in the face of the P&L too. But if that is error in the 1,000 crore relating to almost 600 700 cr, that will having a material impact on the financial past year, and that we have to see the third balance sheet was need to be prepared or not. So while if there is an Ind AS 8 question, na, so try to link between na, ki the third balance sheet in the previous year, how you will adjust that. So moving to next, the question relates to the evaluation of performance of the company and the TPM, total productive, on the input data. So this is again SCMP question, and most of the examiners using the info have correctly calculated all four ratios: availability, performance, and overall, and answered one of the key points of the evaluation. The performance of was above average. So TPM the ratio was required to be calculated. So that is if you'll go to the question or what you was required to do for the particular index now 8 also key how they presented. I will see prior period are omission and as it is line from the what are prior period error. Firstly they quoted that. Now as per in error कि what is the treatment of error in the financial statement की recognition they affect करता है disclosure को करता है कि financial statement do not comply with the index if they contain material error or immaterial error made intentionally. मतलब we have to see material error was due to fraud that may happen intentionally was there और कैश फ्लो मतलब कि ethical it can be related to ना ethical question also कि management they have done that identify that. Now brief description of this key incorrect application and disclosure error occurred before earliest period, that is the third balance sheet that we have to restate or not opening balances and restate of the comparatives that you have to see. Now incorrect application, how it is an incorrect application of an accounting policy that we have to also present. So now this key availability, these three ratios, the OE that was required to be calculated. So this is a practical. So mostly will it well examiner will have correct get the correct answer for this question. So now moving to next. The question related to maintainability of the petition against the minority shareholder before the NCLT. Most of the examiner provided the correct answer by provision, analysis, and conclusion of the both part of the question referring to the case scenario and the related. However, some examiners do not provide the analysis regarding the admissibility of petition at initial or this. मतलब most of the examiners have done ठीक है law का question था तो what they have done कि minority shareholder के against petition was pending, so provision quoting analysis they have done. So see if what examiner is ask seeking from that. Firstly, the provision should be there, then your analysis, and then the conclusion. Three parts in in every part, or like in all the question, what you have to present in the descriptive one. Eh, First, write the provision, analysis of the case fact from the case scenario, and write the conclusion. You will fetch the marks for all the if you just write the provision also, no, you won't fetch marks for if you do not write the conclusion or your analysis, because in the open book you're writing only the provision is a normal thing. Everyone can write, but if you write an analysis just a bit also in a one two line or three line, like what was the you will you may get at least a step marking for that provision also. So I'm moving to next. It is required to outline the investment strategy, the entity investing to ensure the profitability in a company on the verge of the bankruptcy. Few examinees, few examinees have rightly answered the strategy of the long position in the debt and short position in the equity to improve the profitability. However, most of them fail to explain how the strategy will result in profit to an entity investing in a company which is near to the bankruptcy. Examinees were unable to correctly explain how an investment strategy involving long or short position in debt or securities could result in profit. Because this type of question you do not get in easily in the AFM paper or in the study material. So that was is it was a to test your presence and how you'll present your answer in case of bankruptcy and how it will affect the profitability by going to long and short positions of equity and debt. Now, next is it was required to determine whether the entity can adjust 100% of its output liability against the balance in the ECL and to identify the nature of the documents based on the to claim ITC. Most examining explain the Rule 86B, which imposes a restriction of 99% utilizing the ECL. They also outline the document requirement to claim ITC, मतलब कि GST four requirements are there ना कि to claim ITC. Or in some cases, examiners have not calculated the correct amount of the discharge of output liability on the e-cash ledger, credit ledger, and the cash ledger. कि 99% वाली restriction that will happen, so that you have to मतलब see कि ना कि अगर 100% हम नहीं कर पा रहे या एडजस्ट प्रॉपर्ली या डॉक्यूमेंट्स नहीं है हमारे पास या हैं तो उस बेसिस पे व्हाट यू आंसर यू हैव टू राइट. But mostly performance was good, so not going into much detail for this question. So next is it was required to provide guidance on the general disclosure in the financial statement regarding intangible assets and to list the conditions of the derecognition. It is a general, generic question. Ki write that about the disclosure about the intangible and the condition for derecognition. Most examiners provided a correct answer regarding the provision related to intangible, including the acquisition of software and the condition for derecognition. How you will derecognize. Two conditions are there. However, in few examinees will mention the condition for recognition instead of derecognition. So, what is the properly see the requirement of the question? What is asking? Recognition, derecognition, presentation, disclosure. What is asking? See this thing na properly in your solution. Because in FR na in FR disclosure type of question do not generally come. They come to related to amounting things. But in IBS na generally go into the disclosure type of question. Disclosure and derecognition in that way. So see what is the requirement of the question. Now next, it was required to examine 5.6 with reference to the provision of company that the validity of the proposal of the regarding remuneration and additional remuneration and the sitting fees of in inputs in the given. मतलब इसमें तो remuneration वाला question था section 197 was applicable, so you just have to go to the 197 provision from the index or just from then to the module, then see write the provision, then your analysis and write your conclusion. So what examiner means correctly explain the provision. Majority address the provision regarding remuneration in the sitting fees in general. General they have written. because now what he's saying, however, most examinee failed to provide an in-depth analysis of the provision. The analysis was superficial, resulting in no marks. मतलब whatever provision you will write कि from the law मतलब study material or that material you are carrying, but writing on the basis of case facts, as per case fact कि what is there, you writing कि as per this and this 1 lakh is there, so answer you are writing, that is a generic मतलब anyone can see कि ना you are writing to the relating to the whatever you are writing in the provision and whatever you are quoting in your conclusion. A normal person can see मतलब, so that's why na at least a link between your provision and your analysis should be there a bit. Though he is taking in-depth analysis, just you should do at least a bit analysis of the whatever you're writing in the provision. Try to link it with the case. Just that you have to do. The second last is it was required to advise the company on the adoption of the forward cover and the money market cover for the payments in foreign currency, along with the requirement to state the circumstances in which money market hedges more advantages than the forward cover based on the input given in the case study. Most examiners correctly calculated the forward cover and money market, a practical question. However, some examiners did not adequately explain the advantages because that is a theory question. Some might have missed that thing also, make the which negatively impacted their performance. मतलब examiner see ना कि what you are doing, just the practical thing, or you are just linking or seeing the proper requirement of the question. So do not miss. At least you will write a one or two liner. It will see ना कि हाँ you have seen the proper requirement and you are referring to the above also कि what you are doing. Just you are not doing the practical calculations. Just that. At least write a bit calculation or theory point of view from the conclusion you can write what is happening. Though it was clearly asked on the question, provide the advantages that I can show. 5.6. Advise the company whether it should adopt forward cover on market, then under what circumstances money market has the advantage. So he's clearly asking, मतलब the question is clearly asking. If you will not write, मतलब it will see na कि you haven't written or you do not know about that. At least write whatever one or two liner ki how it will help. You can go to the theory or मतलब कि whatever given in the study material or the material you are having, write from that also and link it to the with the case too. And last requirement is, well, the comment is, it was required to deal with the matter relating to inconsistency in the application of accounting policy in the project report, along with the justification of generation of UDIN and the consequences of not generating the UDIN. Most of the examinee failed to correctly address how to deal with the inconsistent application in the project report. However, most examiners explain the justification for the generation of UDIN because UDIN may at least know kya, and what are the consequences. Because that was relating to accounting policy in the assurance report, not in the audit report, and how you have to deal with it with the proceed in the assurance report and with matter relating to inconsistency in the application of the accounting policy. Okay, I'll go to the answer of this last question. See, as per assurance report, so normal reporting SA 700 will not be there. So as per SA 3400 examining perspective, it is the duty of the professional accountant to see the what information is there in the historical financial using the appropriate accounting principles. If accounting policy is not fulfilled, the accounting principles is also not fulfilled. The presentation of this is not a misleading. Accounting policy are clearly disclosed. If that is not there, so that is the मतलब कि provision from the question. Any point four you can write. Then on the basis of that, provide the description of the fixed assets required in the question and value of the stock. That is the case facts are not consistent with the historical financial statement. In addition, no disclosure was also made. In such a case, a qualified or adverse will be given. So now you have to present key what will it will impact. So that is from my side. If you will have still query, you can write on my Telegram channel to me. I'll solve that. So all the best for your exams. Thank you.